Alright guys, so now I'm going to give you a challenge. I want you to style a form that looks like this. It doesn't have to be exact, but something similar that looks pretty decent and clean. So I'm going to give you all the HTML. I'm going to give you even the classes and all the elements we're styling along with some hints. So in this lecture, you should find a file called formstyling_start.html. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a file called 12_form_styling.html. And I'm going to grab everything that's in that start file and paste it in and just go over it real quick. So let me just close this up. And let's take a look at the HTML first. So we have an ID of container that wraps around everything. And then we have a class of form wrap that wraps around the form. Okay, so this part right here, we have an H1, a paragraph, and then in our form, we have some fields. Each one is wrapped in a div with the class of form group. And inside the form group, we have the label. We also have the input. Okay. So we have first name, last name, email, password, confirm password. Then we have a button, which has a class of btn. Okay. Then we have a paragraph, which is this part right here. And underneath the form wrap, we just have a footer that says already have an account login here. So that's the markup for this. Now up here, you have everything that's going to be styled, all the styles that I'm going to add along with some hints. So I'm going to go along and just give you some hints here. So as you can see, I actually brought in a font from Google Fonts called Railway. So you want to use that as your font family. I have an asterisk here. It says may want to add border box for box sizing so padding does not affect the width. Okay, we've talked about that quite a bit. We should also reset the margin and padding. In the body, I'm just saying the background color is going to be this right here. Now, I'm not saying that that's all you need to put in the body or that's all you should put. It's just a hint. Okay. In the A tags, underlines are ugly, so you probably want to remove those. Container. So remember, margin auto on the left and right will center a block element. So you want to center the container and remember margin auto. All right, and I'd also suggest using a max width for responsiveness. You also may want to add some padding. Now the form wrap is the white area around the form, so this whole box right here around the form and the heading and all that. So figure out how to style that. The H1 in the paragraph, you want to center these. Remember the text align property. The form wrap, or the form group I should say, each label and input is wrapped in the form group. So this is a form group, right? So you may want to add some margin separating these. Label should be turned into a block element, okay, because we want the label to be on its own line and we don't want to use line breaks. I only use line breaks to give you guys examples. You don't want to use those in your actual layout. So turn that into a block element so that the next element pushes on to the next line. Inputs should reach across the form wrap 100% and have some padding. By default, inputs are very ugly. They're very thin, and it won't go across the whole thing. So you might want to set the width to 100% and add some padding. So the form wrap button, which is this right here, should wrap across 100%. It should also be displayed as a block. Okay, background color is this hex right here. The hover is this color for the button. Let's see, the bottom text is smaller, so you might want to set the font size smaller for the bottom text. Footer, which is this right here, should be centered. So remember text align. And the footer color, or I'm sorry, the footer link color is this right here. So that's a lot of hints. So I'm going to give you guys this as a challenge to try and recreate this. Okay, and don't just skip it, really try it. If it looks absolutely insane and nothing like this, don't worry about it. Don't get discouraged. It's kind of a tough challenge if you're just learning CSS, but just give it a shot, okay? And then in the next video, I'll go over it and I'll give you all my styling. And it doesn't even have to match mine, okay, as long as it looks decent. So I'll see you in the next video, which will be the conclusion. Alright guys, in the last video I gave you an assignment with some HTML of a form and a bunch of classes and IDs with some hints inside your CSS and your styling. So in this video I'm going to go through and I'm going to add my styling, and don't worry if yours doesn't match the my exact CSS, that's fine. So let's start off with the asterisk here. So as the hint says, we might want to add border box for the box sizing property so the padding doesn't affect the width. We also want to reset the margin and padding. That's pretty self-explanatory. So let's go ahead and set box sizing to border box, and let's clear out the margin and padding on everything. Okay, so I'll save that. Now all the margin and padding's removed. So we used Railway for the font. As you can see, it's already brought in here. So let's go ahead and actually I'll put that back. Let's set the font family, and we want to set that to Railway and sans serif. Okay, we'll save that. Now we have our font. And the hint there is the background color, which is that hexadecimal value. So let's do background. You could do background or background color, and we're going to set it to 344A72. And we'll save that. There we go. So we should also, well, actually no, we don't. Yeah, we'll set the color to white here. We are going to have that white form wrap, but we can just change the font color in there. And then the last thing I want to do here is set the line height to, let's do 1.8. Okay, so let's see, underlines are ugly. So let's remove that. Remember, text decoration. I want to set that to none. That will get rid of all the underlines. Let's go to our container. So remember, we want to center the form. So we want to use margin auto, and we also want to set a max width, and we may want to add some padding. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to set the margin to auto, but on the top and bottom I'm going to set 30 pixels just to move the container down a little bit. Okay, and we'll set a max width, and it's a pretty thin or narrow form, so we're going to set this to 400 pixels. Okay, and then let's set the margin. Oops, I'm sorry, not the margin. We already did that. We want to set the padding to 20 pixels and save that. Okay, so next we have the form wrap. This is the white area around the form and the heading and all this. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's say background. Let's set that to white. And then for padding, I'm going to set that to 15 pixels on the top and bottom and 25 on the left and right. So since our text is white, our body text, we want to change the color of this form wrap text. So let's change that to 333. Okay, so that's our form wrap. Now let's move on to the H1 and paragraph. We want to center these, so we want to use the text align, and we want to set that to center. We don't want to center everything. That's why I didn't add it to the form wrap. We don't want these, the inputs and stuff centered. We just want the heading and the paragraph centered. All right, so each label input is wrapped in form group. So what I'm going to do is just add a margin top to each form group. So margin top, let's do 15 pixels. Okay, just to push each one down. So for the label, we want that to be displayed as a block level element. So let's use the display property, set that to block, and I'm going to change the color to, let's do 666 and save. Okay, so for the inputs, they should go all the way across. By default, they don't. And then we also want them to have some padding because they're much too skinny right now. So let's do that. Let's say we want the width to be 100%. Okay, we want it to go all the way across, and let's add 10 pixels padding to each input. Let's also set the border to, let's do DDD, 1 pixel solid, and let's give it a kind of a rounded border, so we'll say border radius, and let's do just 5 pixels for each one. Okay, so that makes the inputs look much cleaner. Alright, next we have the button. So button should wrap across 100% and display as block. Background color is this, so let's first of all just grab that and set the background to that. Okay, we'll get rid of that. And let's set the display to block. Okay, so I'll save that. And then we want it to go all the way across, so let's do a width of 100%. Okay, so now you can see it goes all the way across. We need some padding here, so let's do padding 10 pixels all the way around. We want to bring it down from the top input. You can see it's kind of stuck to it right now, so let's do a margin top. Remember, margin is the outside, so we'll do 20 pixels, push it down. Let's also make the color of the text white, so we'll say color white. And what else? Let's do let's see, I think that's good. Let's change the pointer to a cursor. Notice that if we go over a button, it doesn't change to a cursor. We want that to happen, so we'll say cursor pointer, and now when we hover over it, we get the cursor, or I'm sorry, the pointer. Alright, so let's see, what do we have next? The hover. So I want it to have a kind of a different color, or just get a bit lighter on the hover. And you can see I actually gave you the hexadecimal value here, so we're just going to go ahead and add the background and make it that color. So now if I hover over it, it actually gets darker. Alright, so the bottom text, which is this right here, we want to make that smaller, so the default, remember, is 16 pixels, so let's set the font size here to 13 pixels. And I'm also going to move it down a bit by doing a margin top of 20 pixels. Next thing is the footer, so this right here, we want this to be centered. We also want to push it down a little bit, so let's say text align center. Oops. And let's do, let's see, the color is fine for the text. Let's do margin dash top, and let's move it down 10 pixels. Okay, so now it's centered, it's moved down. Last thing is the link, so I gave you the color for the link, so we're going to change that. Let's say color, and we want, oops, what happened? There we go. So paste that in and save. And that's it. So don't get discouraged if you don't have this exact CSS, or if you couldn't do it, or if you can only do part of it. That's absolutely fine. If you're just getting into CSS, then this is kind of a tough project. So we're going to move on, and in the next section, what I want to do is take what we've learned in the HTML section as well as this one, and build an actual website, an actual project. Okay, so we're going to build a small hotel website that has, you know, a home page, an about page, contact page, and we're going to style the navigation menu and add some background images. So we'll actually get to put something together with everything that we've learned so far. All right, so I'll see you in the next section. Alright guys, so in this video I just want to go over a couple small things that I missed that I feel are important for you guys to know. So this is kind of just an aside. And I just have a file called index.html, and I'm going to just generate my boilerplate here. And let's just say test file. And we'll put in our style tags. And then in the body I'm just going to have an h1, and I'm just going to say hello world, and a paragraph underneath with, let's say, 15 words. And we'll go ahead and open this. And the first thing I want to talk about is visibility. Okay, so We looked at the display property where we could display block, display inline, inline block. Later on, we're going to look at display flex, display grid. There's also something called display none, which will just remove the element from the browser completely. So I'm going to take the H1 and I'm going to set display to none and save. And notice it completely goes away. So this can be very useful, especially when it comes to building responsive websites and responsive applications, because sometimes you might want something not to show on mobile screens. So this comes in handy. Now there's also a property called visibility. Okay, so we can set visibility to hidden, and I'm going to save that. Notice it goes away, but the big difference here is that it still takes up the space. Okay, display none will just completely remove it from what's called the document object model. Visibility just basically makes it disappear or makes it invisible. It's still there in terms of the space. Okay, so that's the big difference between these two. You're going to find yourself using this much more than this, but it's still important to know that that's available. All right, so the next thing I want to look at is the order of precedence and also the important flag. So basically, if I take this H1 here and I give it a color of blue, if I save that, obviously it's going to turn blue, but if I give this a class of, let's just say hello, and up here I say dot hello and give that a color of red and save, it turns red. So normally the further down the style is, that's what's going to take precedence. However, targeting a class is going to override targeting the actual element. And if I take this class of hello and I move it above the H1, you might think that, well, now it's going to be, let me just fix this. You might think now it's going to be blue because this is further down. However, if I save, it's still red. And the reason for that is having a specific class and targeting that, it's going to override just the H1 itself. All right, now I just want to put this back how I had it, like that. And if you come to a situation where and this might happen if you're dealing with other style sheets, maybe you're using some kind of CSS framework and you're bringing in external style sheets as well, and you want your style to override another style, you can use the important flag. So right here where we said color blue, I'm just going to add on to the end of this, I'm going to add an exclamation and then the word important. Okay, now if I save this, you can see now it's blue because this important flag is going to say it doesn't matter if there's a class of hello or anything else, nothing else matters, this should take precedence. Okay, and the only way that this is going to work is if I also put important on this, which is stupid and defeats the purpose, but just to show you that it works, we'll go ahead and save that, and that will be red. All right, but I'm going to get rid of that. I do want to keep that though, just so you guys have it for reference. All right, and then the last thing I want to mention for now, and if I remember anything else that I forgot, I'll come back to this video and edit it, but is negative margin values. We went over margin, we went over padding, but we didn't go over negative margin values, which you really should try to avoid if you can, but it is possible. So of course we can take this H1. Actually, let's work in the class down here. We'll say margin dash top, and we say 30 pixels and save, and it gets pushed down 30 pixels. But at the same time, we can also do negative 30 pixels, and that will just bring it upwards. Okay, and you can do the same thing, like let's do margin, let's do left, negative 30 pixels, and what it should do is pull it this way. Save, and there it goes that way. All right, so you can have negative values with margins. However, you can't do it with padding. If I do it with padding and save, that's not going to work. Okay, because remember, padding is inside the border. All right, so those are the main things that I wanted to mention. So we'll move on and let's start our hotel website project.